I've got another appropriations matchup for you. Today, we're going to square off the different versions of the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Bill. You may have seen this on the news because this was the bill in which Chris Van Hollen was trying to add an amendment to protect the FBI headquarters relocation to Maryland, and he got screwed over by the Senate Republicans, as is tradition. As has also been tradition in this appropriations process, the Senate versions have been much more bipartisan and much saner than the House versions. Senate Democrats, I am not telling you to cooperate with this budget process, but that's a whole other issue we'll talk about in my weekly wrap-up. Technically, the House has only done their subcommittee markup and not the full committee markup, so this is actually a pretty preliminary draft, but I wanted to go ahead and square these off with each other because the Senate is looking at what's called a minibus. So you know how I've talked about an omnibus bill versus separate appropriations bills? Well, now they're trying to do little clusters, so those would be minibuses, and the first cluster will include in the Senate this Commerce version. So the Senate has fully marked it up, the House is still working on it. I wanted to go ahead, though, and compare it for you to the current House version, so that's the disclaimer about that. Let's get into it. This bill is extremely involved and we'd be here all day if I went into every single subheading. So I'm going to break it down by title this time. As a reminder, middle column is the president's request, as much as I could make it out because the skinny budget is not that detailed. The left column is the House markup so far, and the right column is the Senate markup so far. So starting with the top line, as always, the president was trying to cut a ton out of this bill. From what I could tell, about 12%, but the House definitely tried to match him, and the Senate said, we're not really matching you at all. Title 1 is the Commerce title, so this is economic development, that kind of thing. The president's request was $8.5 billion, which is a 16% cut. The House said we're not doing that and came in at $10 billion, and Senate's coming in at 10.8, so just about the same. Within Commerce, you'll notice some themes. The Minority Business Fund gets cut in the House. The Economic Development Administration gets cut. Basically anything that would help the common folk actually develop businesses and participate in commerce in a meaningful way in this country, that was getting cut in the House version. In the Senate version, there may have been some cuts to parity the House of the President's request, but they were not nearly as extreme. As usual, the Senate's version tends to be more sane. Now on to Title 2, the Justice title. Again, the President was asking for a pretty steep cut of 33.2%. The House and the Senate both basically said no to the cut. They're trying to fully fund it again at about $37 billion, which is on parity for FY25. Remember, all budget numbers are going to be compared to current fiscal year, which is 25, which ends September 30. So the third title is Science, and again, this was where a lot of political theater and grandstanding was happening. The President was trying to make a lot of cuts to both NASA and especially the National Science Foundation. It was like a 55% cut to the NSF. All in total, his cuts to the science title were about 37%. The House was like, we're not doing 37, but they did try to make some cuts at 32 with 6%. The Senate said no to any cuts. They pretty much just came in and were like, we're not doing that, which was hilarious. Title 4 is related agencies, and this is again where you can see some of the president's priorities versus we the people's priorities, to be frank. These agencies include the Civil Rights Office, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. As you can imagine, the president was proposing quite a few cuts. I could not find a really good summation in total, but I'm assuming it was probably pretty close to the House, which was trying to cut about 22% from this title. The Senate did not match. They've got this title at $1.25 billion as opposed to the House's $963 million. And the only cut they made was to the International Trade Commission, which I thought was hilarious. They actually kept the EEOC and the Civil Rights Office at FY25 levels. So in case it wasn't clear, we like the Senate's version of this bill more than the House version, and certainly more than the president's stupid budget request. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but even though the Senate version is saner, we still got some problems with this bill. And we also have a big problem called the Big Beautiful Bill, in which we need the Senate Democrats in particular to demand some changes in the appropriations process and to not cooperate with the nonsense right now. I'm going to be going more into what you should be saying to your Democratic senators regarding the minibus, which includes this appropriations text. Stay tuned.